This is the first time I've ever gotten this thing to work on my laptop. I always end up at the last moment having to go back to my iPad. So cross your fingers. And that's a good thing because I get more people on one screen. So I think maybe it's not.
Got it. What's this Pam Kinzinger? That's funny. Hello, everybody.
Do you have your mic on?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
No. You can
Cover the camera.
X out your video and take a drink and then come back in.
Well, I can just stick my thumb over it.
Yep.
You can mute yourself in your bottom left corner.
Mute yourself.
Oh, no, I want you to hear all the jokes.
Could you please mute yourself in the bottom left corner?
Press.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. This is the regular city council meeting of September 13th, 2021. And with that, I would like to ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Long,
Present.
Counselor McLaughlin,
Present.
Counselor Runyon,
Present.
Counselor Randall,
Present.
Counselor Richardson.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Mays,
Present. Thank you. I'd like to ask Councilor Tim McLaughlin to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Mayor Mays, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second, anybody?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilor Long and seconded by Councilor Randall to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any
We have an amendment to the agenda to add an executive session.
Okay.
Today.
Mr. Kara, you had your hand raised. Did you want to explain that any further?
No, thank you, Mayor Mays. The city manager explained it perfectly. If we could have that executive session posted to the end of the agenda, I believe the city clerk emailed out a supplemental agenda for tonight's meeting. Just want to make sure that the public's aware of that.
Okay, do we have to say we're approving the agenda as amended then?
That would be terrific. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Long, Counselor Randall, that okay with you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
McLaughlin.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5A on the agenda is a certificate of recognition for Greg and Katie Cummings, who I'm happy to say are here tonight. I see them while they're on my far left. Mr. Cummings has a red shirt on, and we're glad that you're here. I'd like to read why we're presenting the Cummings with a certificate of recognition. On July 3rd, 2021, at around 11:35 p.m., a fire started on D Finger at the Dalles Marina. The fire started near the south side of the dock and burned rapidly to the north. Everyone on the north side of the dock was trapped due to the intensive heat from the fire. The fire quickly spread, and by about 3 a.m., had completely destroyed all of the residences on that dock, as well as several boats. Wade Collins and Karen Carlin, along with 2 other marina tenants, were stuck in their boathouse, which were north of the fire and in immediate peril. The heat from that fire made it impossible to evacuate via the docks. The only option they had was to swim to safety in water that was filled with fire debris, including ash and oil products. Greg and Katie Cummings were in their boathouse on Seafinger the night of the fire. They saw the fire and knew that people might be stuck inside their boathouses. Greg and Katie used their boat and drove to the end of D Dock to help. Greg and Katie were able to evacuate 4 people who were trapped by the fire. After dropping off the 4 marina tenants on C Dock, Greg and Katie transported law enforcement officers over to D Dock, where they made sure no one else was trapped. The officers were also able to untie several boats from the dock and pushing them away from the fire, which prevented their destruction. This action was important because as the night went on, boats that could not be saved caught fire and started drifting towards C Dock, putting that dock at risk of catching fire. Mr. and Ms. Cummings, on behalf of the City Council and the city residents of the Dalles, please accept our gratitude for your selfless actions in the face of this emergency, saving lives. Our Zoom format, Mr. and Mrs. Cummings, prevents us from properly thanking you with a round of applause. I think people can clap if they like and join me. I think I speak for everyone as the certificate of recognition says that we owe you a debt of gratitude for your selfless and your courageous act. We thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to say? I'm probably catching you off guard, but.
Not really. Just you know, we've gotten some attention from this since the fire, and I just wanted to make mention that there were a lot of people down there that evening that did a lot to help. You know, Angie and Eric McNabb were there. They were instrumental in helping keeping boathouses safe. And Mike Kasinger was there, and he helped keep boathouses safe. And Jeff Renard was there, and Brad Lowry was there.
Yeah. Well, once again, we thank you very much for your courageous act, and I'm sure everybody deserves a lot of recognition, and we're certainly glad to recognize you and anyone else who might have had a hand in that tragic event. So once again, thank you very much for coming tonight, and thank you for your act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 5B on the agenda is a certificate of recognition to Mr. Robert Kensinger for his out-of-the-box thinking. And this was suggested to me by a member of the Traffic Safety Committee of the Commission, Mr. Russ Brown. Many of you know Russ, of course, and telling me that Mr. Kensinger had been very instrumental in having some thoughts about the intersection at 6th and Weber. Let me read you the certificate. in recognition of out-of-the-box thinking that resulted in smoother traffic flow on 6th Street. As the new member of the Traffic Safety Commission, Robert suggested modifying the sequencing for the traffic signals at 6th and Weber to eliminate the left turn conflicts that existed. On behalf of the City Council and the citizens of the Dalles, please accept our gratitude for your willingness to serve and bring forth out-of-the-box solutions. Mr. Kensinger, I know, is here. He was the one that was not muted before. I'm going to give you another chance to unmute yourself, Mr. Kensinger, if there's anything you'd like to say. We appreciate your willingness to serve on the Traffic Safety Commission and appreciate the contribution you made to the intersection.
Well, thank you for allowing me to do it. I enjoyed the government academy that I went through that got me the position on the committee. And it was my pleasure to spend the 3 months sitting out there counting people in traffic to come up with a solution. I'm glad I could help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to point out also that as Mr. Kensinger pointed out, he came to us at the Traffic Safety Commission by virtue of his participation on the Citizens Academy sponsored by the city, which once we get the COVID thing over with, that's another program that the city hopes to reintroduce to the community. Thank you very much again, Robert.
You're welcome.
Okay, item 5C on the agenda is the welcome sign presentation by the Beautification Committee. I see there are several members of that committee here tonight, and I'll leave it to the chairman to introduce them and to take it from here, Ms. Tiffany Prince. Tiffany.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for having us today. I've got a bunch of squares here, but I do want to point out the committee members that we do have. We have John Nelson here, and I'm scanning. We have Connie and Bill as well, and they're also on the committee. So I want to just thank them for joining. And we'll keep it very brief. I've spoke about this topic before, I think at least once, if not twice. So I'm here to make a little presentation and hopefully get a little recommendation or something like that. So over the past year, the Beautification Committee began to explore the idea of new welcome signs, entry signs for the Dalles. Part of the initial work was to identify the locations best suited for the signs with the help and consultation of ODOT and city staff. ODOT was very helpful in identifying areas near the freeway that would be suitable considering traffic flow and visibility. And there was many hours working with ODOT. We have a subcommittee on the Beautification Committee that was tasked in working with ODOT and pretty much finding these areas that we could put signs on if it pans out. And so they said that these signs, because they're off the freeway, which is ODOT like right of way or whatever, they are suitable, which I'll show in a second. So then we come down with potential ideas regarding design. And as I think John has on his hat, so a design was created by a former committee member, Max, which is used on the ball caps, which is what John has on. And I think Mayor Mays has one as well. This little sign, and I have a better photo I'll show in a second, is also presented to the owners of the property selected for the monthly beautification award that we have for about 9 months out of the year. So this is just one idea of possibly many in which city staff have already spent time on, and they did approve of that design for our use. So the Beautification Committee would like the city and City Council to support the welcome sign project. We understand that the design, the structure, and the placement are city responsibilities. However, we only wish to offer our support and share the information we have already received from ODOT and Public Works. We believe that new attractive welcome signs for the Dalles will be an important first impression of the community, which in turn supports visitors and is a good investment in building a healthy economic base. And so with that, I have a couple slides that I'm going to share that kind of goes over this. I think there's only like 3 or 4 of them. Okay. You should be able to see my screen. So this is for the west side, the location where exit 82 is. And Izetta has this information, these slides, and she can share them with you all to have and review them for longer than this, because if this may be a longer conversation. And then just a little kind of mock-up design layout of ODOT, I believe, has these things here. I could be wrong. But they have these things over here. So this is kind of what it would be, a mock layout of what it would look like. This would have to be built up, and the sign could be here. And this is the coming off the freeway up here or down here. And then on the east side, this is off of exit 85, which is down by the marina. And there is already a sign right here. So because of right-of-way and visibility, we had from ODOT, we had very specific parameters. And so you can see that that's mapped out what we could do, which would just be a very simple, well, I don't want to say simple. It'd be just a sign right here, which is pretty much just on the back of that sign. And it could be a little bit higher. It cannot come lower than the sign that's already present. So it can go higher though. And so this is the kind of some design components. And this is what was on the hat right here that John was holding up for us. So when we discussed this as a committee, because we didn't want to come to you all with just like, oh, hey, make some welcome signs, with no, like at least like thought about it. Each of us, I had requested that every single committee member come to one of our upcoming meetings with their own ideas of what could potentially be on a sign. And something that every single one of us, and it really hit home when Connie, who was here, said, the river is very neutral, it's simple, it's why, it's commerce, it's history, it's symbolic, and you're not choosing something that maybe leaves out another industry or not. Like, we all are here and surrounded by the river. It's an excellent recommendation or suggestion. So I think that's my last slide. So this would be, could just be worked into the sign with some city logo or whatever. So that being said, our ask is that we hope that you all agree and see the importance and the value of this. And so our ask is that we know that we cannot go, oh, let's spend all this money and do this. But we hope that you all will consider maybe working with Julie or approving that the city think about putting some budget towards this in the future. And because it will be kind of a task, or sending out an RFP or an RFQ to maybe get some design work, or whatever the process is that Julie has, she shared it with us. So we're just here to kind of solidify the importance of beautifying the Dalles and these welcome signs. And we are happy to continue work, like serve on a committee if you have a committee or anything like that to help this process if so needed. And with that, if there's any questions, or I'm happy to help answer.
Excellent.
So Tiffany, you're basically asking for the city's council's blessing to proceed working with the city staff to make this project a reality. Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Yeah, I think more or less from my understanding, more or less our work here is done, because it would all be city ran from here on out, and I could be wrong. And Julie's welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that it's, we've done all the legwork. We're presenting that this is very valid and very valuable. And if you need our committee to assist the city staff in proceeding, we are here to do that. Ultimately, city council has to approve budget. So that's another reason we're following the process.
Okay, Julie, is that pretty well your understanding as well?
Yes, Mayor Mays, that is my understanding. And thank you for that presentation, Tiffany. That was great. So from here, if the council gives us a consensus tonight, we'll get staff working on some budget figures and what that project might look like, and get it in the budget for the next fiscal year.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for either Tiffany or the staff? I don't think we need a motion. I would assume that everybody's nodding their heads that they can go as planned. Councilor Richardson, I'm sorry, I thought you were raising your hand.
Sorry, no.
Okay,
I fully
Councilor Long.
support carrying on with the signs. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Councilor Long? Oh, okay, thumbs up from Councilor Long.
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, anybody else want to ask any questions or any comments?
Mayor Mays.
Councilor Long?
I just wanted to thank the committee again for doing the legwork because that is very time consuming. And then also having the discussions and presenting us with the information from that discussion because even though we'll ultimately vote on it, that is very good information that took a lot of time and effort to come up with. And it's certainly something that was appropriate for your committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to John and Connie and Bill, who are very active and valuable members of the committee, who have done a lot of great work in this community over the last year and a half, 2 years. Anybody else? Okay, I think that should do it. Thank you very much, Tiffany, and we'll move on from here. Thank you. Okay, item 6 on the agenda. During this portion is audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. Up to 5 minutes per person will be allowed. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to the city council for up to 5 minutes on any subject that is not on the agenda? Anybody?
Mayor, I would.
Okay, Debbie Ferrer, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mays and councilors. Thanks so much for the opportunity that you give at each meeting for citizens to share their concerns. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of a local group of citizens that I belong to called Protect Oregon's Progress, as well as other residents who are concerned about the impacts of global warming. So we're here tonight to ask the City Council to take very seriously the threat climate change poses to our city, including drought, fires, disease, displacement, and severe and erratic weather. Your actions now have the potential to affect our community for decades to come. As you begin a long-range planning process this fall, we ask that you look at things through a lens of climate change. The time for debating whether or not this is real is over. Climate change is upon us, and now it's time for all leaders to take action. We see 3 major questions that we should all be asking ourselves as we make decisions going forward. How can we mitigate the impacts of climate change? How can we adapt to the impacts of climate change? And what can we do to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions? Obviously, answers to these questions deserve much more thought and discussion than we have time for tonight. We hope this is just the beginning. We feel it's essential to acknowledge that there is a cost to act, but there is also a cost to not act. Consider, for example, that 1/3 of US residents live in a county that was struck by a climate-fueled disaster just in the last 3 months. Many of those events set new records and led to billions of dollars in damages. Locally, I think it's safe to say that most of us don't want more record heat waves like we had this past summer. Globally, the newest report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change informs us that the planet is entering the hottest period in the last 125,000 years. Several of our neighboring committees are way ahead of us on this front, which is good news for us. We can learn from their experiences. This is certainly not something that the Dalles has to figure out all on its own. We want to emphasize that this is an opportunity for our community, an opportunity to be leaders in a changing economy, to establish local renewable sources of energy to keep costs down and to work together toward a more livable future. So we urge you to begin this planning along with the county and the port, as well as other local stakeholders, and start building a healthier, more vibrant, and more resilient community for us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any
Ex-
questions or comments for Ms. Ferrer?
Ms. Ferrer, can you please state your address for the record?
Yes, thank you. Again, the name is Debbie Ferrer. My address is 900 West 18th Street in the Dalles.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I would just like to let you know that we are preparing to start our visioning process for the city of the Dalles, which is a long-term plan. And I think that this is a great topic. So I hope that you will stay engaged as we launch that program and participate in some of the meetings that we'll be having and get your issue on the table. It's perfect time for that.
And that's exactly what I thought too. So that's why I'm here tonight. And I would very much like to be involved in, in any opportunities along those lines. As some of you may know, I've spent 32 years as a biology teacher here, and I've been teaching about global warming for many, many years. And so it's a really issue that's near and dear to my heart.
Any other comments or questions? I've got a couple. You mentioned the county in the report, Debbie. Have you talked with them yet? Have you gone before them?
Not yet, but they're on my list.
Okay, and the group you talked about, the acronym was POP, which stands for what?
Protect Oregon's Progress. And it's a local activist group that, takes interest in, local and state as well as national issues. So.
Yeah, the last thing I have on this is I'd like to get a copy of your statement. I, for one, maybe you could send that to the city clerk and she could distribute it.
Yeah, is that the best way to send to the city clerk, or just to
so.
send a copy to each of you?
Is that, do you care one way or the other?
I do. I would like to have it for the record.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then she'll have it for the record. It'll be a part of our minutes, and she'll distribute it to the five of us. Okay.
Thanks.
Make that six of us. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. Anyone else who would like to address the city council? Last call. Okay, moving on. Item 7, city manager's report. Ms. Kruger.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. One item, I have another one that is floating out there, but I think one of the counselors may bring it up later. So for my report, a few weeks ago, I sent you a memo just letting you know that staff was working on a process to include a hiring bonus for lateral police officers. We have been struggling, like many communities, to hire officers. And then when we hire an officer who is brand new and we have to go through the academy for, I can't remember, I think it's 20 weeks now, the expense of that and having to have them train for a very long period of time, it makes good financial sense for us to try to get some officers hired who have already gone through all that process. So because that would be considered salary, I wanted to bring it before the city council and get your approval because only the city council can approve salary issues. So it would be a bonus, a hiring bonus where we would give them half of it on their first pay period, but they wouldn't get the other half of the bonus until they completed their trial period of 12 months. So we wouldn't be paying the whole thing up front. And we believe it would actually save us about $14,000 to even with the bonus if we could do this program. So I would like to have a motion or at least a consensus tonight that you would be okay with us pursuing that.
I have a question.
Councilor Long.
Yes. So when I was thinking about this, I I have some experience with my husband, previous husband, being in law enforcement. And one of the things that I think was true at that time is that law enforcement officers don't look to just move around, hop job to job. They like to stay where they're at. And so if they're looking, that means something's wrong where they're at, and they're just looking for a different location, or whatever. So it's not like it's an incentive that's going to pull somebody laterally from another agency who wasn't already looking. So my question is, if we offer this bonus, does that make our offer better than other cities that are currently making the offer? Because if it's not, then I don't think it's worth it, because you're basically would be giving them money for something they would do anyway.
I think if, and the chief is here and he may have a different response than I would give, but I think if you are looking to make a move, for instance, if you're unhappy with the place you live or the city that you work for, and you're looking for a smaller community or a community that offers a better lifestyle, particularly the Dalles is known for its recreational lifestyle, which can be very appealing. And I don't think there are only 1 or 2 cities in Oregon who are offering this bonus at this time. So I do think if you're, like you said, Councilor Long, if you're already looking, that makes it even more appealing to want to come here on top of the other conditions that we offer, which is a good competitive salary and an excellent retirement program and the lifestyle. Chief, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, Mayor Mays and Councilor Long, what you mentioned in your opening remark, Councilor Long, was formerly true. People did stay with their agencies for a very long time. I myself was one who did that, and I don't think that we're seeing the same level of commitment to particular organizations as we did in the past. I think that the newer officers are much more likely to skip around and try and find a greener pasture. And this is one way for us to incentivize that move. The dollar value that we're asking for is right in the middle. It's not high, nor is it low. It's a very standard bonus. And it would offer us the opportunity to bring in some immediate help, like the city manager mentioned. And so for us right now, we're having a bit of a staffing crisis. It's incumbent on us to keep this community safe. And that's another tool for us to do that, is to offer that lateral hiring bonus. Now, I also want to preclude any thought that just because you're a lateral, we're going to hire you. That's untrue. You're still subject to a very intense background investigation to ensure that we're only hiring the quality candidates. So if we had somebody apply who was indeed skipping away from a problem or trying to avoid some issue in their current agency, they might not be a suitable candidate for us, and we'll certainly screen for that. So with those remarks, I hope that I covered some of your concerns.
Yes, thank you, Chief Worthy. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, the city manager.
I do have one.
Oh, Councilor Runyon.
Say again how soon the first half would be paid of the bonus?
The first half would be paid at their first pay period. So it would be 1 month after they were hired, basically. And the other half after their probationary period or their trial period, which is 12 months if you're a lateral or police officer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Mayor, you're muted.
That's because I had to clear my throat. Perhaps there could be an explanation as to how the city is protected from a prospective officer collecting the bonus and then leaving a short time after they're employed.
Daniel or Tom, do you want to answer to that?
Yes, sir. I can speak to that. That's part of the reason why the bonus is split up between and sort of an initial payment and then one essentially a year down the road to protect the city a little bit. And we do feel like once people get sort of landed in our culture here that they're much more likely to stay. If you've been here a year, you're probably going to be here for 2 or 10 or more, maybe even a whole career. So it is a risk, but the hiring process is so intense, even for a lateral, with the background investigation, all of the paperwork that's involved, the training, issuance of equipment, all of that, that it seems unlikely to us that somebody would do all that for half of a bonus and then try and move on as well. So it is a identifiable small risk. We think it's unlikely.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I believe the city manager is asking for a motion. Perhaps a motion to proceed with the recommendation as presented.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to make that motion. I'm fine with this request. I make the motion that we proceed with staff recommendation as presented.
Thank you, Councilor Richardson. Is there a second?
McLaughlin, second. All right.
Oh, we have a tie. I'll give it to Councilor Runyon. I thought he was first. It's been moved by Councilor Richardson and seconded by Councilor Runyon to proceed with the staff recommendation for bonuses for prospective police officers. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, City Council. I appreciate that. We'll get to work on that right away. And that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay, council reports. We'll start with Councilor McLaughlin.
Oh. Well, the month of August is generally set aside for counselors. Let me click on my, so you can see me. Set aside for counselors to schedule family gatherings and time to get away. This past month, it seemed as if events required immediate attention. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all of the first responders that continue to protect and serve our community. This year, with the help of the immediate air support, fires in our region have been short-lived and controlled before any major loss of property and life. Thank you, fire, police, emergency, and all support personnel for your service. Homelessness continues to be on the rise, and I've been working with Director Kenny LaPointe to assist and locate the navigation center that is planned for our city. Meetings with Sheriff Lane McGill and Mayor Rich Mays and other key officials will continue until the site can be secured. During the month of August, saw an increase in theft and other criminal activity. I attended meetings with business owners, law enforcement, Mayor Mays, to discuss ways to minimize and ease the impact. I believe these meetings have resulted in laying solid groundwork that will be positive, well, that will be a positive impact on our city in reducing crime. COVID-19 cases once again started to rise in August. A close personal friend remains hospitalized in Portland and remains in critical but stable condition. I'm hearing stories of the impact of pandemic in our community. The financial and emotional drain on individuals continue to worry me. There are growing numbers of fellow citizens that are struggling to survive the economic impact that this virus is creating. We stand our best chance of making it through this crisis if we all work together. My mom always told me this too shall pass, but it's a struggle. Our airport continues to move forward. Fuel sales remain at an all-time record. Public Works Department has been busy this summer with projects such as ADA curb improvements, paved streets, chip seal projects, and new paint striping. The new speed signs, lighted stop sites, and traffic signs have all improved the safety of motorists. Thank you very much. I am working to find solutions to our shopping cart dilemma. The company sells a magnetic advanced activated wheel that will lock when it's removed from a controlled area. This shows great sign, and I'm going to make recommendations to some of our shopping centers. The Veteran Park located south of Ixtapa Restaurant is well underway and looking good. Thank you, Jonathan and Julie, for thinking out of the box on this. Good job. I would like to highlight an issue that has come to my attention. There are those silent, unrepresented individuals that have worked 2 and 3 jobs and sacrificed during this pandemic. I worry that landlords seeking to recover losses from unpaid rent, credit lines that have been pushed to the limit, and individuals just trying to make ends meet will suffer the most as we recover. We cannot forget these individuals as we work to fairly distribute recovery funds to the most in need. With that, that ends my report.
Thank you, Councilor McLaughlin. Councilor Runyon.
There are not a lot to report. A couple of things. A recent Columbia Gorge Veterans Museum meeting held upstairs in City Hall where the museum is open. And we have been trying to keep that open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 1 till 4 as best we can under current conditions. Also, the Mid-Columbia Veterans Museum Committee, in honor of a National Day of Recognition of POWs and Missing in Action, POW MIA, that day is coming up on Friday the 17th. And although there will not be a large formal gathering, there won't be chairs and speakers and so forth, we do invite the public to come up to Kelly Viewpoint by Cirrhosis Park and take a moment. You may wander around the various monuments that are there and so forth. And we encourage physical distancing and masks and so forth. But from 6 to about 6:30, if you're so inclined, it would be good to see you up at Kelly Viewpoint near the Veterans Memorials on Friday. So thank you for that. And that's all I've got, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Runyon. Councilor Long.
I have no report.
Councilor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report other than to say it seems like it's been a while since we last met in July, but I enjoyed having August off, and it's good to be back and see you all back here as well.
Thank you. Finally, Councilor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No report tonight. One question, however, if I may, and that is, would you please, for the record, at some point when appropriate this evening, maybe give us and the public a brief sense of when the 2 long discussed Google agreements will be up for discussion and council deliberation? Just an update on the timing of that, if you can, please.
Yeah, I believe the Strategic Investment Program Agreement, the SIP agreement, will be up before the council on October 25th. And the other agreement, which is the development agreement, will be, it has not been decided finally on that, but I might need to talk to the city manager about that kind of timing. But I expect that to be sometime in October as well.
We expect to bring the water agreement as a discussion item first at the next council meeting. We're still working on finalizing that, but we hope to be ready for the 27th of September meeting for that.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Richardson?
Yes, thanks to both of you.
Okay. Item 9 is the consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the important items and issues. Any councilor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. Tonight, we have 5 items on the consent agenda. Minutes of the July 12th City Council meeting. Second, the meeting of minutes of the July 26th council meeting. Concurrence with 5 appointments that I'd like to make. George Hex to the Library Board, Michael Holleran and Larry Fairclough to the Traffic Safety Committee, and Tracy Griffiths to the Museum Commission, And as you had a memo in your packet also about my appointment of Darcy Long to also as the staff liaison the council liaison to the Traffic Safety Committee as well. Also a resolution assessing properties for the cost of abatement and junk. And finally, 4 items that the Public Works Department would like to declare as surplus property. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilor Runyon and seconded by Councilor Long to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item 10A is authorization to purchase a new pickup truck for the Transportation Division. I assume that would be Mr. Anderson.
Yes, it will. Thank you, honorable mayor, members of council. This is actually bringing back an issue that the council previously considered and approved back in February of this year. Council authorized the purchase of this pickup. Unfortunately, due to the national microchip shortage, the manufacturer was unable to fulfill that order and the order was canceled on us. Since that time, some of the incentives available for fleet purchases have reduced. There's been some increase in prices of the vehicles. We're now able to replace basically what was the original order, but the price has gone up. So I wanted to bring this issue back to the council again because there's about a 14% price increase involved. Our original purchase price through the state bid was $58,970.60. And as I mentioned, that included price incentives of about $8,350. And those incentives now have been reduced to about $2,500. The new purchase price for the same, essentially the same vehicle would be $67,080. We do have the availability to get our name on one that's probably 2 to 3 months out on delivery. It would be a white pickup instead of our normal red fleet color. If it was desired to do so, we could paint it after it's received to match the rest of the fleet. For budget allocation, we did have within Fund 9, the $65,000 that was planned to be spent last year carried over. We had also budgeted $80,000 in the current budget for replacement of what we call our Go-Gator, which was a wastewater truck for spreading biosolids on fields. We actually ended up completing that purchase last year. And so those $80,000 in the current budget are available to cover this purchase as well. With that, it's staff's recommendation that the city council move to authorize the purchase of a new 2021 Dodge Ram 5500 4x4 flatbed pickup from Rontonkin Dodge in an amount not to exceed $67,080 plus license fees.
Any questions for Mr. Anderson?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Rontonkin Dodge out of Portland, or?
Yeah, they have the state bid.
I see. Okay.
Any other questions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the purchase of a new 2021 Dodge Ram 5500 4x4 flatbed pickup from Rontonkin Dodge in an amount not to exceed $67,080 plus license fees.
Thank you, Council Randall. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Council Randall and seconded by Council Long to authorize the purchase of the pickup truck. Is there any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Long, aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The final item on the agenda before we go into executive session is approval for the distribution of the first installment of American Recovery Plan revenues. With that, I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. You will recall we discussed this item at length at the June 28th City Council meeting. staff brought you an original or initial list of our proposals. The council had some great ideas as well at that meeting. So we've taken that list and changed it around a little bit, which I'll just go over that in a moment for you. We did receive our first installment of the ARPA funds at about $1.75 million. So the projects that we have on the list that I will review with you, while at the time when we developed them, we felt that in general they meet the criteria, before any of these projects would actually have any money spent on them, we'll double check on that, because as our finance director can attest, from the last 2 federal grants we've received for COVID funding, the criteria seems to change fairly frequently. And so she has always made a lot of phone calls to make sure before we actually spend any of the funds that we're doing it correctly, so we don't have to return any funds or do anything incorrectly. So we will make sure we do that before this list moves forward. The city council agreed at the June 28th meeting that they wanted to give Northern Wasco County Parks and Recreation District $400,000 for Cirrhosis Park rehabilitation. And I put on the list that is still pending their budget. And I would bring that back to the city council before we would authorize that expenditure. Traffic safety devices. We hope to replace some of our lost transient room tax and fuel taxes. That's a kind of an iffy one at this time, because we have to do an evaluation on our entire revenue loss for the year, not just those taxes. So our finance director is working on that. We have $75,000 for specifically downtown economic development and developing some programs and incentives that would help the downtown businesses recover from the COVID experience. That would be a contract. The Chamber of Commerce replaced the $30,000 that we didn't put in their budget for tourism. The big change is the property acquisition fund. I had originally had $500,000 in there, and that was pretty much earmarked for affordable housing to help Mid-Columbia Housing or some other agency purchase properties to build affordable housing, and also for the Navigation Center. I don't know why, but I always want to call that something different. The Navigation Center project that's being worked on by Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. And I did increase that because we had additional funds available. There's also the college working on a small business incubator project that we may be able to help them acquire some property for that down the road. So I just kind of lumped it all into the one line item in this list. And also you received a letter via email today. I hope you all received it from Kenny LaPointe, the MCCAC executive director, that kind of just was a thank you for supporting the property acquisition for that project. So I think that will be in the record in the minutes. The city clerk has a copy of that. We put in $100,000 for police department security and safety. When we reviewed the criteria, we believe that these 2 programs of the Next Door Incorporated are programs that do meet the criteria for this funding. One is outpatient behavioral health, and the other one is a transitional living program, which is a program that when children age out of foster care at the age of 18, there's no place for them to transition into being adults and having their own housing. And this program that they have, they actually help those kids transition. They have a home where they can live and learn the skills they need to get out on their own. So great programs for the community. So that came up to about 1.6 million, almost 1.7, with a little bit left over, about $86,000. And then I do have a request from Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, and they haven't formally requested that they are interested in a short-term loan using this funding that they would repay, and that would be just part of their financing package while they're doing this navigation center purchase. I think that's all I have unless anyone have any questions. We're recommending that you approve the list that's in your packet. And if things come up during the year that we can fund, and maybe something else comes off that we can't fund, we would bring those items back to the city council for your consideration. Thank you. Oh, Mr. Mayor, you're muted again. Gonna start charging you. That's gonna cost you 25 cents.
That's cheap. Sorry, questions and comments for the city manager? Councilor Richardson.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, for our city manager. Julie, thank you for bringing this back. This is just, I guess, clarification in my own mind. At what point would you be bringing back specific items for council deliberation and final approval? That's my question.
Okay, I was waiting I thought there was going to be a part two. If the item is on this list and it meets the criteria and the project is ready to go, we usually use the term shovel ready. We would go ahead and fund it based upon the fact that you've approved this list. If something happens and, for instance, if the Parks and Rec wasn't prepared to do that project during the current year, then we would probably fund it again next year in the next year's funding, which would free up some funds, but still keep it on the list because we know how important that was to the city council from your last meeting. Same with the replacing the lost revenue from the fuel tax or the transient room tax. If we were to learn that we could only recover half of that and there was more funding, then we would come back to the council and ask, is there another project you want to fund or something like that? But if it's on this list tonight and it meets the criteria and it's ready to move forward, we wouldn't plan to come back with each individual project.
Did you say
let me, if I may, Mr. Mayor, let me follow up. Some of these items have more zeros than others, and there's two of them which are pretty large and which I support in concept, but would like to see some specifics. I feel that we would be doing well to see specific plans for the Cirrhosis Park, $400,000, and the property acquisition, or at least the biggest chunk of that. Those are just very large round numbers. And again, while I can do appreciate and support those in concept, I would like to see something a little bit more concrete before we write the check for that.
Okay, we can absolutely do that. I know that the Columbia Community Action Council is looking that $650,000 figure. They're looking for about $500,000 for their project, but once they get all that in order, we can certainly bring that back to you for final yes or no.
I would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I agree with Councilor Richardson on both the Cirrhosis Park and the navigation center issues. I think it's with that amount of money, it's important we get a little more detail as to what the prospective parties have in mind before. And I know you weren't just going to write them a check and tomorrow, but I think we're all interested in, especially I am with Councilor Richardson. It sounds like interested in those two in particular.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Runyon.
Just to echo Councilor Richardson, same sort of things that were on my list. I think it's very important, especially with land and so forth. You use the term shovel ready in your talk about everything, and that is important, that we actually see a project on paper, and ones that are not land acquisitions also. We need to see, you need to see some detail and whatnot and feel comfortable about that and make a decision whether you need to bring those details back to us, because maybe in your mind the project is going one way from what it was initially described to you, but now has changed. And all we're dealing with, is a list. So we would appreciate any feedback in that regard before checks are written.
Thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Mayor Mays, I brought up the situation with the COVID and citizens within our community that are struggling and rents and back rents. Well, I spoke with Joel Madsen, director of Mid-Columbia Housing Authority this afternoon, and they are doing a great job. They have resources available, but not necessarily everyone is getting the message. So I'm taking this time to do a shout out for the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority and asking people, anyone that's listening, that if you know of a friend or if you know of someone in our community that's struggling, they will help with back rent and they will help with rent to get people from going underwater and adding to our homeless situation. So thank you, Joel Madsen and all your group for what you're doing. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Julie, do you feel you have direction from the council to proceed from here?
I do. I would like to have the city council move to approve the list that I provided. And if you're uncomfortable providing it, you could add something to that motion that is just with further information on the larger projects or however whatever makes you comfortable with that motion.
How about a motion to approve the list of items with the understanding that the staff will be coming back to the city council on at least two of these issues that need further description and itemized list of budget items or whatever. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay. Good luck, you guys, making a motion based on what I just.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Well, I have the staff recommendation to move to approve funding for projects and programs as presented from the 2021 American, I should say, Recovery Plan funds. So we could just add to that with additional approval. I'm writing as I talk. And
subject to additional information as may be required.
Detailed
Dan, is that okay with you?
I think so.
Since you raised the issue.
I think we understand what we're asking. So let me give it a crack here, and wiser elder heads can correct me as needed. I move to approve, Mr. Mayor, funding for projects and programs as presented from the 2021 American Recovery Plan funds, with the understanding that there will be additional staff follow-up giving specifics on two of these projects, the Sources Park and the Property Acquisition Fund, and others as needed.
I move.
Well put.
I will second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Council Richardson and seconded by Council McLaughlin to approve the motion as explained by Council Richardson. I think I'd be remiss, though, before we get into any more discussion, to call on any members of the audience that would like to comment on this issue. Anybody? Okay. Any more discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Often aye.
Long aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I just say I'm very pleased and I'm proud of all of you and our staff, because when we began this process, we started out, here's the criteria. I took it to our leadership team, and they're so thoughtful and professional that they weren't just thinking, what can I get for my department? They were thinking, what is important to our community? And then we brought the initial list, and the council had the very same attitude. What's important for our community? Not let's just dump it into our general fund or do something like that. And it just speaks so highly of all of you, the department heads and the city council, that you're so caring about the community. And I just really appreciate that. So thank you all.
Well, thank you, and thank you, City Council, as well. I'd like to thank you all too, and special thanks also to the city staff, several of whom are here tonight. So Ms. Cannon and Chief Worthy and Mr. Hunter and Mr. Anderson, thank you. Thank you for your participation.
Mr. Kara as well.
Oh, there he is, Mr. Kara, our city attorney. Yes.
And your finance director. And your,
Ms. Wilson, how can we forget?
And your city clerk.
Oh, yeah.
Our city clerk, yes. Ms. Grossman. I probably left out more people than I included. Sorry about that. Okay. Anything else on this? Okay, the city council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.6602E, which allows the council to meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in an executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. So with that, I'm adjourning into executive session, and I believe there's another Zoom link for those that are invited. And for
Yes.
those of you that care to stick around, we'll be back with you after our executive session is over.
I'm ending, so I will have to end this session and then start the executive session. So give me